Yeah, hi folks. Now, as expected, I caught COVID off my wife, and believe me, it wasn't a walk in the park as I had originally thought. It was nasty, much worse than any flu I've ever had. But anyway, I'm back, and as I've mentioned several times before, Ardern keeps banging on about mis- and disinformation for the sole purpose of controlling her media market share. And she confirmed that the other day. But first, she just got caught trying to sneak into law a 60% clause, entrenchment clause, that would make it difficult for future governments to privatise water infrastructure.
The government's backed down from its controversial Three Waters entrenchment clause after an outcry that it would have set a dangerous constitutional precedent. But backing away is one thing, giving the public an explanation, a proper one, of exactly how this happened, quite another. Joining me this morning is, for regular Monday slot, is the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. Morena, Prime Minister.
Morena.
Great to have you back on the show. So last Monday you said this was not necessarily something you would be aware of, that this clause and the 60% entrenchment was happening. Since then, Nanaia Mahuta has said that it was discussed in caucus and you were present. So how...
Ryan, sorry, just to, again, you know how I don't really particularly like correcting you, but I also acknowledged last week, yes, it was discussed at caucus. I think, though, here the most important thing is that regardless, we're taking ownership of this as a team. It was an SOP that came from another party.
What other party? Oh yes, the Greens.
But we, as a team, when it came before the House, voted in favour of it. We agree that was a mistake, not because of the subject matter. We don't want to privatise water assets, but because of the use of entrenchment. Entrenchment, and we've talked about this, is commonly understood to be where you embed a supermajority to change anything. Our view is that, yes, actually, we should have some guardrails where and when that's used, so we'll be fixing it and removing those provisions.
Okay, so when you said it's not necessarily something you'd be aware of, what exactly were you referring to?
My recollection of that conversation is I was asked about SOPs coming before caucus. I believe the point I was making at the time is you wouldn't necessarily have every individual, and just not to get into too much technicality on it, every amendment that a party brings wouldn't necessarily go before a caucus. But yes. I confirmed, yes, this general issue was discussed. I haven't got into more detail than that because we're protecting the provision that we don't generally talk about what happens in caucus. But I think the most important point here, Ryan, is regardless of that, as a team we're accepting mistakes been made. Yeah. We're committing to fixing it.
But it's important, isn't it? It's important for people at home to know, was this just, incompetence, negligence? Was there something Machiavellian going on here that you did know about the provision, but you're now claiming...
Sometimes these things are much more Sometimes these things are actually just simple. A mistake was made.
No, it wasn't. You were caught by this guy, Dean Knight from Victoria University, who found the problem and started tweeting about it.
I've also referenced the point that entrenchment is generally understood to be 75% a supermajority. The provision that went before the House was 60%. It was a novel approach. Regardless, our view is that using that provision, we do need to be cautious about when that happens. And so that's why we're fixing it. It's also why, Ryan, we've proposed that in the future it would be useful for all parties in Parliament to come together and have a discussion around when those kinds of provisions come up. Because now we've seen a situation where the threshold has been dropped and it's been put before Parliament.
But you did that. This is the point. You did that, and we still don't know how it happened. So in order to stop this from happening again, shouldn't we find out what happened?
Again, Ryan, here, I think it is important to point out this was not a change or an amendment that was drafted by the government or by a minister. It was from another party.
No, it wasn't from another party. It was negotiated by Mahuta and the Greens. Now to the bit where she confirms that misinformation and disinformation is all about controlling her media market share.
Prime Minister, what's the latest advice you've had on how close Radio New Zealand is to collapse?
Well, again, this is about projecting to the future. Their listenership is declining. You know that, I know that. The viewership of our broadcasters on television platforms outside of On Demand is declining.
That's because you produced biased, one-sided crap.
If we do nothing, we will have to increase the amount of money taxpayers put into those platforms generally anyway. We want to make sure when we do that, we're doing it in such a way that in the future, those broadcasters have the best possible position to continue to thrive. Number one concern around national security at the moment, Ryan, is around misinformation and disinformation.
Now, what does misinformation and disinformation have to do with viewership ratings? Absolutely nothing. This is what it's about.
We will continue to be your single source of truth.
Now to an example of that biased, one-sided crap I was talking about. And hat tip to Hogboy88 for this one.
Our next conversation is one we've wanted to have for a while. We wanted to address the emails we get pretty much daily, often a number a day. The comments, mostly complaints over the use of te reo Māori on breakfast, One News and midday, and even remarks about the way some of our presenters look. We want this to be an honest and inclusive conversation, but also acknowledging this could be confronting for some of you. I don't want there to be a reason to mute us or turn us off. Ultimately, our desire is to foster understanding and acceptance of the partnership this country is in.
No, there is no partnership.
We can't do that unless we are open and truthful. That said, we wanted to start by showing you the emails and messages we constantly receive, and to be honest, these are the kind ones, the ones appropriate to broadcast. I'm over the use of the word Aotearoa, switching channels.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more.
The country I live in is called New Zealand, not Aotearoa.
Exactly.
Speaking Māori with no English subtitles is disrespectful.
Yep.
Māori Language Week has finished. And just a note on that, presenters translate what they've said following te reo words or sentences. I strongly object to mainstream news being invaded by a moko-wearing presenter. Māori have their own news channel. Occasionally, though, we get messages like this. Please continue to speak Māori. You don't realise how your attention to this inspires our whānau. And those of you kind enough, Māori mā Pākehā mā of all races and ethnicities, to approach me on the street to support the use of te reo on our show, thank you. And to the beautiful man who spoke to me on Waiheke Island yesterday morning, thank you. Ngā mihi kia koe. So let the conversation begin. I'm really grateful for the two guests joining us this morning, for sharing their stories and how we can move towards understanding and partnership. Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson joins me in studio, and former Mayor of New Plymouth, Andrew Judd, beaming in from Ngāmatu from New Plymouth. Thank you both so much for just entering into this conversation. Andrew, I want to start with you first. I want you to tell us about your aha moment. Tell us about what your thoughts and actions were before that moment of realisation for you.
So, Morena, so for me, I'm a 56-year-old male pale Pākehā. I had to take a journey that took me on a challenge within myself. That journey was challenging because why did I react towards anything Māori, te reo Māori, our past, our history, from when I came from a place of not even understanding or knowing anything? So that journey had to be honest and brutal within myself. Why did I react to the emails you just read out? That was me. I was in a way raised by my country to react with ignorance, with an attitude, dismissive, rude, and quite frankly and honestly, racist. I am Andrew Judd, a recovering racist.
A recovering racist. What a cartoon this guy is.
So I had to unpack myself. What triggered me? Well, it was ignorance. I didn't know anything. And right next to that ignorance was fear. And fear fueled my racism.
So then, what caused you to reflect on your position that caused you to challenge your own thoughts and your own actions?
Hearing you read those emails, hearing in your voice the pain and the hurt that my previous attitude was doing to an Indigenous people.
No, Maori are not Indigenous. They came by boat, just like the rest of us.
Who did I think I was? I, for the first time in my life, saw that my attitude and the way I responded was hurtful, and I want to be better. I wanted to understand where my role in all of this as treaty partners was.
Well, you can stop believing those lies for a start.
And so I had to take on that I'm the problem.
What did you discover? You talked about anger, you talked about fear. What did you discover when you unpacked that about the anger and where that was coming from?
That's ongoing. That's why I'm a recovering racist. There are things like those emails that trigger me again, take me back to that place. You know, it's brutally honest. I was raised by my Pākehā country to react and respond in a certain way, and it's wrong. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now, and it'll always be wrong. And it's just hurtful and damaging to not just Māori, but to us all, and selfishly to me. Why was I so broken? What did I? If I went overseas, I'd embrace another culture. I'd get the translation book and put effort in. If I went to Paris, and Madame, Monsieur, oui, oui, French, I love it. But don't give me that Maori stuff. Wow, I'm the one that's broken, not Māori, not Te Reo Māori, me, Andrew Judd Pākehā. And so what I found, though, once I was honest with myself, was beautiful. The Māori language is beautiful. It makes me feel more connected, and I'm just embracing it and love it. If I can encourage not just Māori, everybody to step up, not only challenge yourself, but embrace Te Reo Māori. It's a lovely, beautiful language. And a lot of the Māori words are more descriptive and connecting to me than English words.
Well, yeah, thank you, Andrew, for those words. And the one thing that you did say is it made you feel more connected. I want to bring you in now, Marama. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā kōrua ko Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, how do you react to Andrew? I mean, it gives us hope, right, of what the future could look like. But if thinking back about what he said and where he is now, how do you react to that?
It was really emotionally triggering.
Oh, it was really emotionally triggering.
Seeing the example of some of the negative feedback that the show receives, that you receive, and many wahine Māori receive in public places, especially in broadcasting. And I want to say to people like those fearful people, your mokopuna will enjoy learning Te Reo Māori. Your children will embrace understanding Te Ao Māori, because Te Reo Māori, me ōna tikanga, our language and our worldview is beautiful.
Your worldview is beautiful? Freeloading iwi with their hand out all the time is beautiful?
And this, Aotearoa, is the only country that can own it in a way that this country can. And Andrew, people like Andrew have such an inspiring role to play among tauiwi, such an inspiring story to tell us we have nothing but beauty to embrace with learning our Te Reo Māori. What we've seen, though, with more people naturalising Te Reo Māori and Te Reo Māori faces in our public broadcasting spaces, in our public spaces, is that is confronting some people's status quo. And people need to understand that shifting your status quo and what you thought it meant to be a New Zealander is not going to be as fearful as you're making it out to be. That embracing our country, our past, is the only way that we can have a more connected and cohesive, united future together.
I guess how do you create space for that shift? That's the biggest question. And I'll come to you about that as well, Andrew, shortly. But Marama, from your perspective, how do you create space for that?
Tō kaha tō maia me o hoa tautoko, the bravery of people like yourselves, the courage of people like yourselves, and your tauiwi, your Pākehā friends who are supportive of having te reo, of having these discussions in these spaces is a massive part of how we help to shift people. There are some people for whom that fear, unlike with our friend Andrew, will remain cold and hard. There are so many, many more who are just standing on the sidelines a little bit, maybe a little bit inquisitive, and want some encouragement to feel, oh, I can be included. This is inclusive, embracing te reo Māori. Andrew talked about the examples of, look at the meaning behind our words, our place names. They come with stories. They mean a whole lot more. They put our places into a much more beautiful context than this is just a name. They tell us who belonged here, the stories of what happened here. They tell us about the environment, the water, the mountains. These are beautiful things for all of our children to be able to learn about.
And we're not asking people to be Māori, right?
No
Be
one,
yourselves.
in fact, the strongest position that our tauiwi, that our non-Māori can take is to be themselves, in fact. It is trying to be Māori that hasn't worked for some people who have tried to do that. But it is about being strong as Pākehā, as all of the other incredible ethnicities and cultures that we have here. Te tiriti understands that we have to embrace the inherent mana in everybody, and that mana comes from who you are, who your ancestors are. To embrace your ancestors is the strong work to be able to embrace our tangata whenua history here.
Andrew, we're almost out of time, so I want to throw that question to you. You've obviously been through your own journey, so how do we create space for people to arrive maybe somewhere close to where you are, in the
I don't want to be anywhere close to this guy.
hope that people will come close to your journey?
Well, for me, it's the conversation actually is non-Māori to non-Māori, Pākehā to Pākehā. Let's be honest, we are the problem. We are the ones that came to this land and destroyed and took away, or attempted to take away, and in so many ways continue to attempt to take away. Just look at those emails and Indigenous language and culture. It has to stop. We have to challenge each other in a way that answers your question. It will be tough because it is. I get challenged every day as well. But when you see the truth and you understand the love and the joy of what we're talking about, do not step back from that. Challenge your family, friends around that cooler. Challenge those people that write those emails. Because let's be honest, we know everyone in our family and our friend groups that will do that, that mock the way you may pronounce te reo Māori properly. Because what I'm saying is enough already. We are the living example today for our children for tomorrow, and we have to step up and actually be treaty partners.
No, Maori ceded sovereignty to the Crown. Yeah, now folks, that was hard sell te reo propaganda. And we should all know by now that when the left resort to tactics like that, the product they're selling is unwanted rubbish.